Hi, this is Lulu. I'm a compulsive overeater. And we're just going to talk a little bit about God, the, how do I bring God into this food program? How do I conceptualize God? How do I relate to God? So for me, it was a process. And there's just a few things that were very, very important that I heard. One thing I heard was, if God were small enough for my mind, he wouldn't be big enough for my needs. Such knowledge of him is too wonderful for me. It's too great for me to even know. So that was so helpful to me, thinking if God was small enough for my mind to totally understand, like, where's the fabulous? You know what I mean? The fabulous is in the bigness of it, and it's the mystery of it. Because this world, I mean, everything you look, I mean, there's just mysteries everywhere, and that's just the way that this planet functions, the universe functions, all of nature functions. It looks like it's all just happening independently, like it's magic, but it's not happening haphazardly. It's very orderly and very self-correcting, and it's mysterious. So the minute that I understood that I was never going to understand it. So I wasn't going to learn and define it as this end of it, of like the big story. It's too big for my mind. And so I went to a couple of different retreats. And when you go to like retreats, like OA retreats, if you ever get a chance, if anybody starts socializing again, ever, and you get to a retreat, you get to see OA retreats in your area. They're like usually really nice weekends. It's all people in fellowship, and it's like, it might be at a little retreat center. It might be at a, there's a, what's that place in Biddeford? What's that place called? Spirituality Center. Yeah. Or just any place that has conference space and hotel rooms, and they usually have themes, and they have activities and little breakout groups, and they have presenters that talk about the steps. And it's really nice to just like be at a weekend and submerge. And I usually do a couple a year, 2 or 3 a year, but not anymore. But I'm looking at the date of this. This is June 2015. So it was 5 years ago. I was abstinent for 1.5 years. I was very newly, had gone through the steps. I was freshly out of the steps. I was still kind of working on my conception of God. And what they had us do is they had us write a letter to ourselves from God. Put it in an envelope, address it to ourselves, and pass it in. So that's what I did. And then 6 months later, whoever ran this retreat, 6 months later, they threw them all in the mail. So 6 months later, now I'm 6 months more into recovery, I get my letter back. And it says, "Dearest Lulu, I'm thrilled that you have awakened to all the beauty, love, and miracles in my magnificent world. Through all the hate and darkness is love and light. I don't like to see all the violence and hate and spiritual sickness in my world, but not everybody is aware or open to any other way. I'm so glad to see that you do not participate in evil. I would like to see you work harder at not judging the sick souls. Pray for them. The minute you see yourself judging anybody on anything, turn your thoughts to yourself and your shortcomings. You all have shortcomings that just comes along with self-will. Just don't be running riot with it. I love you, and I am always with you in spirit. Stay peaceful, and please keep doing my work. Spread love, help others, love God." So 6 months later, I got that letter, and it was just like, here I was at this moment. I was working so hard at not judging people, because I was judging people. you know, and it was my step 10 work. It was like my step 10 work was like on fire because I was post big book step study process, and I was still working on this God thing, and I was still judging people, and I was still getting resentful, and you just see what happens is that, like, if you do your step 10s, then you never have a big mess to clean up again, because steps 4 through 9 are really about cleaning up a big mess of the past. Once that's cleaned up, if I'm not doing step 10, I'm going to have a messy past again. It's just going to get messy again. So, and you'll just see the step 10s get less and less and less because you're able to, like, all this, you have so much practice. You have so much practice, like just right in your mind, you can just turn something around. Like, oh, I was just going to think that about her. Well, that was crazy, you know, and then boom, it's over. But sometimes you get those ones that stick, you know, and then I still need to do step 10s. Like it says in step 10, you know, we have the selfishness, self-seeking, the dishonesty, and the fear. When these crop up, this is what we do. It doesn't say if they crop up, it says when they do, because the reason they're always going to crop up is because I'm an addict, but mainly I'm a human. I'm human. And I don't think God wants us to be that, like, you know, spiritual. I mean, God wants us to just be human, just be really good humans. So then a year later, so I have another letter from a year later. It was the same thing, but it was a different retreat. I think it was the retreat I met you at, Shalice. Remember, you were my roommate. I was like, oh, they got you this little girl from Maine. I was like, oh, okay. And there she was. And we were like 2 kids having a little sleepover. We had so much fun, didn't we? We were up all night talking in our little twin beds. Anyway. Dear Lulu, it's your BFF, God. God's my BFF now, a year later. I'm so happy that you finally realized I'm around and I always have your back. Always forgiveness, always love. That's what I'm about. See how I tolerate you when you mess up? When you're doing the best you can do? It's not quite as pure and unshakable as my faith and trust in you, but you are just as perfect as you should be in this day. May you be more like me every day. You will no longer fear. You will no longer judge. You will meet people where they are. Use people's character defects as a reminder of the unconditional love I have for you when I see yours come through. We are all doing the best we can. The only reason my world is perfect is because I created it perfect, just for you and yours. There is no flaw in my design. Therefore, there is no flaw in you, nor in anybody else. Just misdirected instinct. Remember, Lulu, unless you're Jesus, Mother Teresa, or the Buddha, you have misdirected instincts too. But I still love and tolerate all that you are. Love, God. So that was a year later. And it came 6 months later. And I wish we could do something like that, like here. But, I mean, how do we even do something like that here? To write a letter right now in your recovery. I mean, I could do one right now in my recovery. And if somebody would mail it to me a year from now, I know it would look like where I was a year ago, because we always need to enlarge our spiritual life. Always. It's a never-ending project. Just really quickly, I wanted to share this, you know, what is a spiritual awakening, and what, you know, when you're feeling like you're spiritually awakened, like, what's that about? Like, is it just like this, you know, do you feel something magical, or do you feel like, do you actually physically feel something, or do you see something, or like, what's it about? It's, you know, it's so simple. It's so, like, a spiritual awakening is just so simple. So when it says, I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, these might be the symptoms, some symptoms that you've had a spiritual awakening. You have an increased tendency to let things happen rather than make them happen. So if you watch yourself and you see yourself letting things happen instead of making things happen, you're waking up. Frequent attacks of smiling. Oh, if you find you're smiling a little bit more than usual, you might think, wow, I might be just waking up to something that's making me smile. Feelings of being connected with others in nature. That kind of that sense of oneness that you can think about, and then you can actually take it practically into just being in nature and being with others, and just questioning, like, how are we one? Like, all right, I read a lot about this oneness stuff, but like, what is it? And then you can just feel it. You can just see how all of nature, really everything, provides for each other. It's a oneness. Frequent, overwhelming episodes of appreciation. When you find yourself frequently appreciating things, you're likely waking up. Because I know when I was in the food and I was asleep, not that I was unappreciative of things, but that wasn't my focus. My focus was on what I was lacking. Mostly it was being fat, and it just consumed my whole life. And it was hard for me to appreciate anything. A tendency to think and act spontaneously rather than from fears based on past experience. So now that comes with unraveling some of the fears when we do our steps 4 through 9. An unmistakable ability to enjoy each moment. When you're just really feeling those moments that you're just really enjoying, you're feeling grateful, you're practicing gratitude. If you have a gratitude practice, God bless you, because I have a daily gratitude practice that I'm going to say is responsible for probably 50% of my spiritual awakening. It's just so powerful when no matter what goes on in the day, you find it. So it's the unmistakable ability to enjoy the moment and practice appreciation, right? So it's the ability, I'm able to see through the crap and find the good stuff. A loss of ability to worry. Like when you find yourself worrying less, it's probably because you're trusting more. And that's a sign that you're waking up. A loss of interest in conflict. When you're just kind of done fighting with everybody, like I'm kind of all set with that, that is a big one. A loss of interest in interpreting the actions of others. When you just stop trying to figure out everybody else, the minute you're figuring out somebody else and what's going on with them and what's wrong about them, go look in the mirror. There's work to be done there. That's the one you should be focusing on. And so the minute I'm losing interest in fixing you and I'm gaining interest in fixing me, I'm starting to get it, which means I'm starting to awaken. A loss of interest in judging others, a loss of interest in judging self, and gaining the ability to love without expecting anything. Ooh, that's a big one. It's like, here I am. This is what I have for you, and I don't need anything in return, because given to you is my gift, So, if you just pay attention to these little things, and they just start to pile up, and they're light as a feather, and then they just become heavier and more prominent, and that's the educational variety. That was me. I wasn't the bright white light. So do you have anything, Shalise, on spiritual awakening or your God letters or anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say that was so beautiful. I'm so grateful that you shared your God letters. I was at that. That was such a fun retreat, and where we met, and I wrote myself a God letter there as well. And it's tucked somewhere in a journal in a moving box somewhere. I wish I could access it right now, but I think the God letter is kind of the perfect companion to our want ad that we talked about. We had talked about creating a want ad, and I just would invite anybody that's listening to write yourself a God letter from the God you hired, the one that you would like to get to know a little better. Perhaps this God could be introducing himself to you, or him herself itself to you, but wherever you're at right now, it would be a great time to write a letter from God to you. And in fact, I'm going to write myself one as well. because I that connection is always, there's always room for growth in my relationship with God. And I just invite anybody that wants to experience that to do so. And you could put it in an envelope and write a date 6 months from now, stick it in your big book, keep it there, and then open it in 6 months and just see how far you've gone. It would be an amazing exercise. Lulu.
Yeah, and another idea would be to just put it in an envelope and maybe stick it under your mattress, and then put it on your calendar. Calendar at 6 months, 6 months ahead, and just say, "Look for God letter in the mattress." And then I'm telling you, 6 months. This is how you'll really, you'll see your spiritual growth and what you were imagining God, what God had to say to you at that moment. And that's a good idea. Hey, I think I might do one too.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a good idea. I mean, like I said, at the retreat, getting it in the mail was just like, they didn't even say what they were going to do. They didn't say what they were going to do. I didn't know it was going to come 6 months later. In fact, I saw a letter addressed to myself in my own handwriting. I was like, what is this? This is really strange. Right? And I'm like, what am I going to do? Be sending myself flowers later, I'm like writing myself letters, sending myself flowers. And I was like, oh, it was that letter. I forgot all about it. It was brand spanking new. I didn't even know what I wrote 6 months before. Yeah. So that's a good way to always kind of a good little check on your spiritual progress. Progress, not perfection, but progress. Always progress. There's always something new. There's always the next deeper level, the next better version of yourself. And yeah,